Hi, I'm Seamless, and this is part 2 of the making of Steel Core. This is the sound design episode, so we're going to talk about how to design all the sounds that we've got here. Let's get right into it. So right up front, we've got pretty regular ARP. So the way that this ARP works... Relax, FL. I chose to put the filter post because what I was doing with it here, I didn't want to interfere with some of the settings that I had going on. This is a little bit complicated and sort of unnecessarily so. I've got part B here has the keyboard tracking to kind of like bring home the fundamental in there. And then part A, see, it also opens up with it. And part A is a little more atmospheric going on. The phaser is doing its own thing with a custom shape to be very sharp. The plug is also on, and the harmonic unison pitch is engaged, which is doing something weird. And this is mostly to ear. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't do anything on purpose, really. It is a square. It has a little bit of prism on, and then this one's an octave higher. Also got Valhalla Shimmer on this, which is causing that big ass feedback going on there. Turning the shift all the way up and then the feedback up. What this does, it's highly, I know it's called the Bucket Brigade reverb, but I don't really know what that means. What's essentially happening is that you're able to change the pitch of each of the following iterations of it, and that you can change how high it goes. And I decided to go above an octave. It's supposed to down, you can go down an octave too, which is kind of cool, or even like a seventh, something like that. And that gives it this kind of shimmeriness, which is why it's called shimmer. And it's pretty cool. I'm automating the volume on that just to cause that to do its thing. It is a square. Yeah, I said that. Other than that, it's pretty basic stuff. There's automation for it. Not really a big deal. And then we have our first hit. There's a lot going on here. So we have a big-ass sub drop, which is a harmor. But I like using harmor for my subs because I like a saturated sub. But here's the thing about saturated subs, is that when you distort a sine wave, you get a square wave. But I want the other harmonic in there. And people usually solve this by just making an octave. And then you got, octave, harmonics, bass. But in harmor, I could just filter it down until it's just the three primary, the first three harmonics of a saw wave, which are closer together than they are after the square wave. I like that better in my ears. There it goes. I've also got this guy doing his thing, because underneath the metal drums, I've got the 808. Not on every hit, but it like accentuates a more regular beat, while the metal drums do their double bassy thing. Also got the first together, plus the first guitar. Now the guitar is recorded in dry. That's what these samples are. They are the dry recordings. I record them into this Edison. And then they're EQ'd before the distortion. This actually goes a humongous way to shaping what the tone is like and how tight it is and how it performs and that kind of thing. So like if you're ever trying to like really work sound with the guitar rig or any other amp modeler and you're not getting what you want, you should be doing this too. And you might be surprised at how good you can get it, that kind of sound. At least in terms of how you want it to sound. This is also like through a little bit more arduous usage can save a shitty pickup if you've got like a cheap ass guitar. I have tested this with many cheap ass guitars. This is a Poulin LE456 distortion modeling, and it's pretty good. I like it. It supposedly is modeling angle distortion. Angle is extremely expensive, but really good. And I don't really know if this does a good job, because I've never had an angle amp, but I didn't particularly care that what it was trying to model, that whatever it was doing pretty good. So I like it. Google it, you'll find it. It's free. Guitar Rig 4. Now, this was made a long time ago, so I didn't have Guitar Rig 5. I'm using it for cabinet modeling because this is how you do digital guitar emulation, guitar sound. The sound of a guitar, a distorted guitar, is not really so much the distortion as it is the cab. Because the cab, a distortion without a cab, sounds like this. The coloration of the sound of a not full spectrum speaker cabinet for a guitar creates the tone that we expect and understand to be a distorted guitar. And so Guitar Rig 4 does that nicely, so I like it. It's double track, so recorded one, pan left, pan right. You have to tell what plugin, LE 456 has a stereo or mono setting. You also have to tell Guitar Rig to be in stereo because it's not by default. Big difference. You also have to tell each individual element in it to be stereo as well, like these guys. And if you have like a more complicated preset with amps and effects and anything in between, they usually have a stereo setting in them as well. So you have to make sure every single thing is set in the stereo, or else it won't actually process stereo. And you want it to. You want to. And then I have an EQ in post. The mixing decisions I made that I actually created this were mostly just based on playing it with the track, like they all are. Do I ever use this filter? What is this? The low pass? I don't know that I ever used this. And then the side chaining from the kick and the snare. Pretty basic stuff. It'll click. That keeps happening at the beginning there. It's just for me playing it at the start there. Lots of cuts, lots of less than perfect cuts, but that doesn't matter because that little moment gets obliterated by the side chaining. Although I did do plenty of corrective editing to lots of the bits that I recorded to this. Not as much as I did for Deathblow, because Deathblow had a lot more complicated parts, and also lots of parts that were by themselves. So that meant that they had to be perfect. Yeah. So over here we have the first bit with the actual bass. You can tell I did this forever ago because the drums are after the sidechain channel. So now I've got two versions of this bass. I have a live one and then a resampled one. The live one is here. It has a lot of things being automated. That's the ARP. I think it's the bass. That's the sub. That's the bass. Nope. This is the bass. So there's a lot of things that I'm automating here. I'm automating stereo panning for some reason. And then right here you can see I'm messing with the harmonic detune. It's actually a pretty big part as to what's happening here. I am also messing around with the units of pitch thickness, and it's shutting off pretty fast in the articulator, which means that like it's stable when you play it. Like it moves a certain amount, and then it stays at that amount, and then it stays whatever that was. It doesn't return to the original amount. It stays at what it ends up being. And so that means that when I mess around with it with the automation, I'm messing around with something that's static, but still kind of screwed up. That's handy. These lines that are being here are from the phaser that are set that way, which are causing some of the interference as well, which is a lot of fun. I'm automating. Here's the harmonic detune. Here's the a filter from something. I don't know if it's actually in. That's in the it's in here. And then do I have a B part? I'm doing it later, yeah. And then panning, and then I guess that's something else. The automation clips are named weird things. They're not actually what they are. Now, why am I automating the D2 multiplicator, which is what it's called? And I mentioned this briefly in the previous video, I'm going to mention it again, is that what that thing essentially does is what Massive's frequency shifter does. Frequency shifter. And I've mentioned before, I kind of explained what the harmonic D2 thing does, but it moves the harmonics away from the fundamental. You might be thinking, well, the shifter moves it to the fundamental. And you're right, it doesn't actually move it in the exact same way, but the results are the same, which is to say that, just that, well, the difference being that Harmor can move away, but it can also move closer. I am just moving away. And if you're in SAW mode and you move it away one ratio amount, essentially double the distance, pitch-wise, you get square mode. So I'm automating smoothly, like I'm shifting the frequencies from SAW into square. And that's what that automation is. So bottom is SAW, top is square. And it sounds kind of bad when it's not at absolute values, like when it doesn't stay at either SAW or square. So that's why it's usually moving, and if it's moving pretty fast or not moving at all, or really, really close to like the appropriate values. And that created, and then now all of that's distorted as a little EQ, and that's primarily what that bass is. Let's make sure I didn't miss anything in here, because sometimes I will. Pitch like this. Yeah, yep, that's pretty much it. The extra bit is where I recorded it into Edison, and then I resampled it into Harmor. And do I still have, even if I did, I guess it wouldn't still be here. Oh, no, there it is. So I resampled it in Harmor. And it's muted because I muted it. That's not actually what it sounds like, but I have since messed with it. It would seem, actually no, I think I tried to resample it again. Yeah, this is a pretty regular resample for me. A little bit of formant changing, some small unison, messed around with keeping the lows regular. Like a filter on it or something, I guess. And then mess around the format mutation, that kind of thing. This is regular resampling, just in terms of how I used to do a lot of harmonic resampling. I don't really do this a whole lot anymore, but when I did a lot. The A and B part business is that if you load it into both parts in on the advanced tab in the B part or the A part, tell it to be side, it'll switch the frequency playing from either the mid, where it'll only play the mono, or the side, where it only plays the stereo. Which is to say, the mono is information that is only evenly distributed between both speakers, and the side is only information that's unique to each individual speaker. It never shares any information. That's mid and side, if you never knew what that was. The combination of those two means that you can resample a stereo signal, because if you do just put it in one part, you're going to resample it in the mono and one of the stereo. So then I took the audio file of that and put it in the drop, and I kind of selected the moments that I wanted to have whatever this particular that particular feeling over the original. And then there's also, at least there should be layered bass in here somewhere. There it is. And that bass is the same bass that I used for this entire track. Now, as for why I used it, there wasn't really a why to this. Getting the guitar sound like this and the bass sound to work like this is not simply a matter of just EQing one until it sounds like the other. You kind of have to make compromises on both, because they are two very different palettes in terms of how they're used and how they sound. But it could really be done with almost any sound, provided you work with it hard enough. I don't know if this was the best one or if it was like the worst one, but it is the one that ended up working the best for this particular track. It felt pretty smooth. I like how it worked out. Let's see, the first new thing here is the lead. This thing is mostly a lot of unison, distorted with some chorus. Feels like there's reverb. I got a hell of room in there. It's really all there is to that. The phaser's not even on. I feel like I tried to do something a little more complicated, but I ended up turning it off just to be the B part. This was a preset that I had made, I think, for Calibrate. And I just changed it around until it sounded like this. Here's the fun. I wanted to go down to flat 7 on the guitar, but I'm not tuned low enough to do that. On the guitar that I played this on, it went down to A sharp, and that was it. That's the lowest I could play on the guitar. So I just took a chunk and I pitched it down a step. You can do that because you're doing it to the dry signal. Because if I had done that to the distorted signal, it would not have sounded good. It wouldn't have sounded like the rest of the distortion because it would have altered the profile of it. And that's super important for a guitar tone, is how sort of like it all works out together. Because it's just, I mean, distortion in general is very temperamental. This part, nothing new in here. Nothing new out here. This is actually just this thing reversed, and then it cuts off. This is an extra string section. It's from the East West Symphonic Orchestra, Quantum Leap Symphonic Orchestra. I deleted the library because I got the Hollywood Orchestra to replace it, but this means that any other older projects that I used it in are no longer operable. So whoops. But it's just some strings. There wasn't anything hugely complicated about it. I probably could have accomplished it with the contact library, and it would have been identical. There's a guitar solo. There's lots of editing. It wasn't really. I went over that last time. I'm trying to make sure I'm not missing anything super important about the sound design of this track. Really, the big interesting thing about this track was that there was a guitar in it, and then it kind of merged properly with what I'm doing. And a big part about how the tone of this entire thing sounds has to do with the fact that I'm at such an incredibly low bass that, like, my fundamental tone of this track is A sharp by tonic. It's stupidly low, which means that a lot of sounds that normally would sound smoother suddenly sound a lot chunkier just because there's more space in them. The wave lengths are longer, which means there's more negative space between the high frequency clicks and the low frequency waves. That's all that means. And I used to struggle with this when I would try to make a sound that sounded pretty cool on this one guy's track, but then not my track, but I don't understand why. And it's because, that guy played it in C, and I'm playing it in E, and that changes everything. It really does. And the whole idea about Harmer's frequency shifter. I should make a video about pointing that out, because it was actually, I didn't know that's what the frequency shifter did in Massive. And when I realized that, it made a lot of trap leads make a lot of sense. This is from Leviathan. It's the Leviathan Risers. Leviathan, I don't even think Leviathan was out when I put that in there. Pretty sure, like, I was still working on it. That wasn't actually that long ago, because I released Momentum in March. I released Momentum in March. At least that I've fixed. So that had to have been. So it was last year when I made this track. So like August or something. Yep. Okay. I'm pretty sure that's it for all the sound design. I don't know. I really hope I didn't miss anything. This track, it feels like there's more going on in this track than there actually is. And actually, the one thing I would do differently if I were doing this again. Oh, actually, there is something different. So, this is a saw wave. It's a Harmer. I was going to do something more complicated, but and I'm not panning out. But this is just a saw wave that's playing with the guitar. It's playing the same notes as the guitar, and it's running into the process with the guitar. You can kind of hear it doing that, and it's there for like reinforcement. It really makes everything kind of the correct note, like, note value. It's round, has a center. And it's also there to kind of I tried to make it sound more synthy sounding, and it didn't quite work out the way that I thought it would, but I left it there anyway. I don't know if I used it for the entirety of everything. I'm pretty sure I skipped out on it sometimes. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If there is anything that I missed, that you noticed that I missed, that you want to know about, and that you have questions about it, let me know. And as usual, have a nice day.